Good morning and Assalamu alaikum, my dears. So, hope you all are doing well, and welcome to yet another session of Deconstruction. So, what did we do in the last class? So, in the last class, I told you some basic points or basic concepts about deconstruction, that was logocentrism and Derrida's critique of logocentrism. Derrida was against this term of logocentrism. Logocentrism was actually a term that was coined by the German philosopher Ludwig Klages, and it meant logos meant language or reason. And according to Derrida, logocentrism is the attitude that the logos, that is speech, thought, were central principle of any philosophy. According to the concept of logocentrism, speech was considered primary or central to language. And we also saw how Derrida was interested in the opposition of between writing and speech. And Derrida had coined a new term called arc-écriture, which means archi-writing. Which refers to a kind of writing that already existed before we even use it. So it's a kind of writing that precedes both writing and speech. And I gave you the example of a child when he calls father, how the concept that the man before him is his father is already imprinted in his mind. And I also told you some basic info, the major works, the biography of writers Jacques Derrida and Roland Barthes. So let's move on to today's class. So let's start today's session with a beautiful quote. When I came across this quote, I could think of nothing else but deconstruction. When you play with words, words will play with you. So I hope you understood the meaning, that how words have indefinite meaning and how the meaning is, is relayed and postponed again and again. So when you play with words, words will play with you. So in your mind, these words, they start creating meanings. So that is how words will play with you. Okay, so our first term of the day will be aporia. What does aporia mean? Aporia is basically a word that means confusion or a philosophical puzzle. It comes from the Greek word that means impassable path. That is, once you reach an aporia, once you reach this path, it is impassable. You cannot pass this. It is a kind of a barrier. Now, the first point that I've put there, to be or not to be. I hope you all know where the line comes from. It comes from Shakespeare's famous play, Hamlet. To be or not to be. So this is a perfect example of an aporia phrase. So aporia basically, it's where the writer expresses doubt about the current topic about which he is writing. That is when a person is writing to you and saying how he cannot write or how his writing abilities are no more there. When he is writing all these concepts to you, it is a concept or it is a sequence of aporia. Imagine someone singing a song about not being able to sing. I hope you understand the contradiction there. So it is a kind of a confusion where the confusion exists within the text itself. So in deconstruction, Derrida used the term to describe a text's most doubtful or contradictory movement. When you read a text and you reach this contradictory moment, when the text is contradicting itself, when the text is putting forth meanings or concepts that is contradictory to what it has been saying till then. The next point, it's a point at which the text has hit a brick wall when it comes to meaning. So the text contradicts itself. It's also a beautiful rhetorical strategy. Rhetorical strategy, used for oration. It's a skill that you use when you're speaking. It's very useful. It is a useful expression of doubt when you want to convince someone. For example, when we ask someone, is suicide a solution to your problems? Is this the right thing to do? So when you're saying, is suicide a solution to problems, you are implying that it is not a solution to your problems. I hope you get the meaning. And Derrida calls aporia the blind spots of any metaphysical argument. Now, according to our Derrida, aporia is a philosophy where the very elements that make a thing possible are simultaneously the same elements that make the thing impossible. So this is what I told you earlier about the text contradicting itself. And he has explained the concept of aporia, giving the example of a gift, hospitality, forgiving, mourning, etc. I think we'll have a detailed discussion in our meet later on. So these are the main points to note about aporia. Next, we have supplement. Now, supplement is another important concept that was, it comes in his essay of grammatology, in Derrida's essay of grammatology. The logic of the supplement is also an important point or an concept that is put forward by deconstruction. A supplement is something that allegedly secondarily comes to serve as an aid to something original or natural. When you have something which is very important, which is complete in itself, and you have something that supplements it. Okay, so for example, imagine the supplement food items that you have. A person who is trying to do bodybuilding, for example, he might eat all the necessary food, fruits, vegetables, the kind of protein building food like potatoes. He might have lots of egg to eat in his diet, etc. But apart from all this, he will take a supplement, a kind of a protein powder, you might see. So that is a supplement that is, it's actually supposed to be secondary, and it aids the what is original. So writing is an example of this structure, because according to Derrida, if supplementarity, this is a quote from Derrida's of grammatology, he says, if supplementarity is a necessarily indefinite process, writing is the supplement par excellence, and since proposes itself as the supplement of the supplement, sign of a sign, taking the place of speech already significant. So you have speech as a very something important there. Imagine, speech is very important, but in certain cases, speech will not suffice. When you go to tell someone, suppose you want to tell your friend how much they mean to you, or you want to tell your friend that you love him, etc. But you go there and you find that he's not there, he's absent. So in order to supplement that, in order to add to that speech, you might write down the concept. You might write down what you want to say. So writing here becomes a supplement to speech. Or suppose you might give an explanation. You might say sorry to someone, but you might feel that the sorry is not enough. So you might write a note also to supplement that. So writing is given as a supplement here. It is that which, the next point is, it is that which adds to something that is almost complete because of a lack in the original. So the original has a lack that is supplemented by this supplement. Derrida gives the example of birth control and masturbation. So I've given the example of birth control there in detail. It can be interpreted in two ways. So I think we can deal with all the examples in our Google Meet. Okay, so let's move on to the next point. Okay, so our next term is another important term of deconstruction. It's difference. It's actually pronounced difference the same way difference is pronounced, with the difference in the spelling. That is why I've highlighted the spelling there. Instead of the E, you have an A. It's pronounced difference, but for practical purposes, to get the spelling right, you can pronounce it with a slight French twist, like difference. It's a portmanteau word. Portmanteau word means a combination word, a word formed from two different words. So it's a pun on difference and deferment. Okay, difference. You know what the meaning is. Difference means contrasting, something that is different. Now deferment or defer means to delay, postponing. This postponing ability is called deferring. Okay, so differing and deferring, it combines to form the word deference. How does a word have a meaning? A meaning is generated because of a word's difference from other words in a system. Within a system, you have many concepts, and one word gets a meaning because of its difference from the other words. A pen is a pen because it is not a pencil. A man is a man because he is not a woman. So how do you understand that this is a pen? This is a pen because it has ink coming from it and it's not a pencil. So this kind of a difference that comes in our mind, how we associate meaning. So it is from its difference or contrast that we get meaning. At the same time, apart from this contrast, we also have the meaning that is inevitably and infinitely deferred or postponed. So meaning is delayed, meaning is postponed. I think I gave you that example in the very first class, how you are searching for the word. I think I gave you the example of the word God. And for the word God, you might look up the word in the dictionary, and you have many words like Almighty, like Lord, and all. So then you have confusion in the word Almighty. So you look up the word Almighty. So when you look up the word Almighty, you find many more synonyms. So this is how meaning keeps on delayed, keeps getting postponed. I gave you the example of the lion when we told about deconstructing the sign, I think. So that all these concepts are what is meant by difference. This concept of differing meaning getting delayed. Okay, so the lion, the meaning keeps on delaying because you get in your mind, you have this signifier changing to signified, and the signified, it becomes the next signifier, and that signifier becomes the next signified. So this keeps on changing. The next point is meaning is disseminated. It can be found in traces in the unending chain of signification. That is what was unending chain of signification, is how the signifier and signified keeps on changing. So when you search for a word, you get many more words, and the meaning is infinitely postponed. So this effect of postponing itself or delaying is called deference. Okay. Now moving on, we have the next concept, and that is the death of the author. Death of the author is another important concept that is related through deconstruction. Actually, this concept came about in the 20th century. It comes in Roland Barthes' essay. The name of the essay is Death of the Author. So this is the same concept, and the essay's name is also Death of the Author. It is an essay by Roland Barthes published in the year 1967. And it's a concept in mid-20th century, 1967. So all these concepts came simultaneously. Difference, aporia, supplement, logocentrism, critique of logocentrism, not logocentrism, critique of logocentrism, concept of decentering. All these concepts came in the simultaneously, the same time. So it is a 20th century literary criticism concept. Speaking simply, what does death of the author mean? I'll give you a very simple explanation, and that is, once the author writes the text, the author is dead. There is no significance to the author. Then when the text reaches your hands, that is the reader's hands, the reader is the ultimate person who creates meaning. So you don't have to imagine what did the author think, or what was the author implying through these lines, or when you read a poem you are wondering what the author meant by this. So there is no need of thinking about the author. Once the author has written the text and it's done, the deed is done, the author is dead. Now the text is in your hands. So the reader has the sovereign power. The reader has the power to create meaning. You remember how we all, when we, especially like, for example, you are learning the poem of Sylvia Plath. Okay, so when you are analyzing the poem, we always have, teachers giving you biographical facts and autobiographical poem. So through these lines, Sylvia Plath is speaking of her relationship with her father. In these lines, she is speaking of her longing for her child. So all these kind of concepts. So this is actually, death of the author is a critique again. So by deconstruction, through this concept of death of the author, the writers are trying to critique this, what can we say, this attitude of finding out the author's intention and finding out what the author is trying to say. It is not what the author is trying to say. The words are creating meaning. Okay, so from the first quote with which I began, how words play with you. So words create meaning. So you as the reader, you have the power to create meaning. You have the power to interpret it. Okay, so that death of the author is basically a concept which tries to, critique this kind of reading. Author's intention and biographical facts should not be important. And Roland Barthes felt that author should be set aside. You should not think about the author. You should not analyze the writing on the basis of what the author is saying. Author is simply the vehicle through which the literature is related. The author does not create, but rather transmits the story which already exists. So again here, through deconstruction, these philosophers like Roland Barthes, he's trying to say that there is already meaning there. The reader has to create his own meaning. It is not the author who is creating meaning. Author has no sovereignty over his own words. That is sovereignty meaning power. The author has no power over his own words, the images, the sounds, etc. that he is trying to relay. And it belongs to the reader who interprets them. Now moving on, in this slide we have a further few more points. So in this, in a literary text, readers should find out what the words themselves actually say. So it is the reader who should find meaning from the words. He should try to understand what the words are trying to speak. So the function of the text is to be read, and so the author and the process of writing is completely irrelevant. That's a very important point to note. The reader is the one who is creating meaning. Here, reading a text becomes an active action rather than a passive action because it generates meaning. Meaning is not present there. It is created by the reader. Okay, I hope it's clear. You have heard of how when we speak of the 4 essential skills, reading, writing, listening and speaking, LSRW. So here, reading and writing. Reading is a passive action and writing is the active action. When you write, you have to be very attentive. You have to look at what you're writing and write, right? But your reading, it's a very passive action. You can be reading in your half mind. You can be reading with other things in your mind. So that is how we conceive of reading. And listening and speaking, similarly, we give importance that way. But reading actually, according to Barthes, reading is a very active action here rather than a passive one, because in reading, the reader is trying to create meaning. Barth's essay is an attack on traditional literary criticism, which tries to retrace the author's intention and the original meaning in the mind of the author. So you are trying to understand what the author is trying to say, the meaning the author is creating. That is critiqued here by Roland Barthes. The text is open to much more interpretation, much more fluid in its meaning than obviously thought. So one text can have millions of meanings to millions of readers. So imagine me reading a text. I might understand the text in a very different way than you might. Okay? So imagine another person reading a text. So he or she might have a different interpretation. So here what happens is meaning becomes fluid. Meaning is not constant. That is what we have been trying to say from the start of deconstruction. That is what basically deconstruction is all about. Meaning is not fixed, but it does not tell you what meaning is. It just tells you that meaning is not constant. Meaning keeps on changing. Meaning is fluid. I hope you remember the first class, how we began the class of deconstruction. You cannot jump into the same river. You cannot dive into the same river twice. So meaning is always different. Meaning is always changing. So the text is more open to interpretation. Okay, so that is all in today's class. I hope you understood. So we'll have a more detailed discussion in our, what can we say, meet later on. Thank you, girls. So keep studying, keep smiling, be happy. Thank you.